Taming your emotional mood swings. If you have trauma in your life like CPTSD or PTSD, then you know just as much as I do about how your mood swings and your emotional upsets are causing so much havoc in your life. This is Dr. Spencer Coaches. Today, I'm going to talk to you about how to tame your emotional mood swings, because it's like taming a wild horse, and it can be so difficult to have control over your own emotions. In fact, I've met people say it's impossible and calling me a liar, saying that it is possible because they're stuck in the reactive mind, just reacting to the world. You see, your emotions are actually created from your reactions to the world. And what I mean by this is we take in information through our five senses, and then we have a reaction to those five senses. How else do we experience the world but through what we see, taste, touch, hear, and smell? And that is our conscious experience. And then there's an emotional reaction, because we as infants actually develop this way of relating to the world because we don't have a cognitive language developed yet. All of our relationship is emotional, and they're actually precognitive. There's 6 base emotions that we basically are innately built into. So when you have trauma in your life, this violates this sense of what is safe in our world, in our sense of love, meaning our relationship with our parents as infants, that we establish a sense of nurturance and safety, usually with healthy parents, at infant. It's very rare to, even if you came from an emotional, abusive family, that they start abusing you when you're 6 months old. So usually as infants, there is a sense of the oxytocin in the mother, and the mother likes to hold the child, and the father likes to hold the child, and that creates a sense of nurturance and safety as a base emotion. And when that base emotion gets violated through trauma, whether it's through verbal abuse, whether it's through sexual abuse, whether it's through physical abuse, that disrupts this natural sense of feeling safe and nurtured and supported. So with CPTSD, after the trauma happens, it changes the way the brain develops. MRI studies show that the brain actually has permanent changes in it with people with CPTSD. Now, what do I mean by CPTSD? It is complex post-traumatic stress disorder, meaning there are many incidences of trauma, usually happening during childhood, from, say, narcissistic parents who are emotionally, verbally abusive, or physically abusive, beat their children, or sexually abusive. And this type of abuse tends to last for many years because it is the parent-child dynamic. The child has nowhere else to go. And often very narcissistic, selfish parents tend to demonstrate this sense of blame for the children because whatever's going on in their life, because they have trauma from their parents. And this is called generational trauma. And this is passed down to the children. So, how much can you really blame your parents because their parents abused them? So you kind of get the idea that the blame game doesn't resolve this emotional dysregulation, because the sense of alienation, a sense of isolation, a sense of helplessness is so extreme that it brings depression. And you know what I'm talking about, because I have CPTSD because I was tortured when I was 4 and 5 years old, and my parents didn't believe me, and they treated me like I was a third wheel, like all I was another mouth to feed and bill to pay, and the only thing they promoted was survival. So I get this. I come from this, and I have cured myself. I've done a lot of things through shamanic journeying, have a degree in psychology, lived in a yoga center, a Zen center, studied with a Zen master and a yoga master, as well as gone through life coaching transformational programs and received life coaching certifications, which all culminated to me to this one understanding, that to tame your emotions requires in-body awareness. Cognitive therapy is great. That works for post-traumatic stress disorder. But if you have complex post-traumatic stress disorder, CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, which is what most psychologists practice, does not work. Even dialectical behavioral therapy gets results with PTSD, but not with CPTSD. CPTSD, because of the permanent changes in the brain, creates this constant emotional dysregulation. In other words, you get upset easily. You take things personally. You don't feel safe. And there's a sense of hypervigilance where you're suspicious of everybody because you don't trust anybody. And a sense of not trusting anybody creates a sense of loneliness because you literally push everybody away. This is what I did growing up. It scared the hell out of me to be intimate, emotionally and psychologically intimate with friends. Being authentic and having transparency and sharing my disposition was the last thing I wanted to do because it was so scary for me, because every time I demonstrated true joy, true appreciation for life, I got crapped on. So I learned to suppress my true feelings, and I had to develop a show for my parents, especially Asian parents, with, all about getting good grades, all about status, all about getting into a great college, getting a great job, which starts with getting great grades. Nothing was ever good enough for them. If I had a B, it had to be an A. If I got an A, it had to be an A+. I got an A+, I had to get it in every class. Nothing was ever good enough. Now, that's the way I interpreted it, but as I got older, I realized they just wanted me to be my best because they knew how tough it is to make it in this world, being a minority in a primarily Caucasian, country in America. Now, things have changed, and I live in a different part of the world. I'm in California now. There's a lot more Asian people. We don't really experience this sense of, guilt and shame with high performance. But that's what I grew up with, and I'm not trying to blame my parents and say they're bad people, but it was because of the trauma that I suffered. It amplified this feeling of not being safe, not feeling nurtured, not feeling supported. And you know what I'm talking about. When you don't feel protected, you go in the state of constant fear, constant vigilance, because the reticular activating system, which is part of the brain that wakes you up in day and keeps you alert, you're constantly scanning the world for danger. You're always looking for danger. You're not looking for the good things, the joyous things, the satisfying and fulfilling things. You're looking for danger. You're looking at potential threats. And walking around as we grow up like this, we walk around like this in our adult life. You know what I'm talking about. This sense of distrust and a sense of assuming people are dangerous over assuming people are safe. And then all people are bad. There's a sense of this weird overgeneralized belief system that all people are untrustworthy, all people are two-faced. Eventually, they'll stab me in my back. Eventually, they'll double-cross me. Eventually, they'll lie to me. Things like that begin to be assumed about people. And then the feeling of not belonging, like you're the outsider looking in, because of this constant emotional dysregulation, you feel like nobody understands you because of this strong distrust for people. And that alienates you even more and makes you feel more isolated. And that's when the depression kicks in. And that's what happened to me when I was 19. I tried to commit suicide. I've gone to the depths of sorrow, the depths of depression, and I didn't go through with it, thank God, and that's what got me into studying psychology and seeking these different healing modalities. So I want to share with you what's really helped my life out. Out of all the things that I did experience, it was really yoga and meditation that helped me regulate and learn how to calm my emotions down at will. So when you have this emotional dysregulation, the sense of anger, rage, fear, guilt, and shame comes up all at once, and it's too much for the brain to handle. So the brain tries to suppress it or creates this emotional overload. You know what I'm talking about? In a sense of constant hypervigilance, constantly on edge, constantly paranoid of people, constantly never feeling safe and always distrusting people because you don't know how to make yourself feel safe. And I'm not trying to blame you or call you a bad person. I'm just saying this is what happens. And it's so mind-boggling as to why we feel this way. Because then when we don't get resolution, we turn to drugs and alcohol or other bad habits like overeating and things of that nature. You see this in people usually who have CPTSD get diagnosed with what's called borderline personality disorder. There are these mood swings that last for days because you get triggered. And you go into this way of coping with this emotions by changing your identity, by becoming a rebel, if you will, a rebel without a cause. Excuse me. A rebel that just says, screw you, parents and your generation. I'm going to do what I want to do. Don't you tell me what to do. Because of the isolation, you figured out coping mechanisms that worked for you through your teenage years, and you stuck with them into your adult life. So there's still a sense of, even if you're married, you feel like they don't get me. And your upsets are making other people feel uncomfortable around you. Because that rage, when you get triggered, that rage kicks in. You blow up on people, and then you feel bad about it. There's a sense of shame. Oh God, I did it again. And then the guilt comes in. And oh, I just feel too guilty and I feel ashamed. I don't want to show my face. This is what I went through. And then, well, now I'm angry at myself and I'm afraid. So then I isolate myself. And then the feeling of loneliness kicks in. And the feeling like I don't belong. Because I actually put myself in that position. Yoga has helped me to tame these emotions so I have clarity, a sense of clear cognition. In other words, a rational understanding of life where I don't assume and create these overgeneralized assumptions about all people. Certainly there are some people that are untrustworthy, that demonstrate qualities of lying and gaslighting and deflecting that show that, hey, I don't need to hang around with these people. But there are also good people that I rejected, that I blocked out, that I pushed away. And I realized there are good people. There are people whom I can trust. There are groups of people that I can feel like I belong to, so I don't feel all isolated. But it's these mood swings that push people away, because underneath the anger, rage, fear, guilt, and shame is really powerlessness, helplessness, anguish, and agony. And it is that powerlessness that is utterly scary to feel. Because when you feel powerless, it's the opposite of feeling safe, and then the fear kicks in. And that fear turns into a terror and an anguish. Because of the powerlessness, there is a feeling of helplessness. And when you feel helpless, you feel like nobody's on your side. And that's when the distrust kicks in. And then you look at the world as being distrustful, and it's a way of making yourself feel safe. You see, the flight, fight, freeze, or fawn response is designed to make you feel safe. Let me get into explaining the neurological impact of trauma and tie that in to the emotional mood swings. You see, the flight or fight response is something that most of us are familiar with. If a tiger was to suddenly appear in a room, you'd either run from it, or if you're brave and skilled enough, you would try to fight it. The other two responses are going to be the freeze and the fawn response. Usually when we're overpowered, as a child, our parents, if they're abusing us, it's just a feeling of overwhelm. We feel powerless. We could not do anything about it. Even if we fought, it would be ineffective. So that feeling of I just better freeze. I'm just frozen in fear. And it's just like a chameleon who blends in with its environment to protect itself from predators, to camouflage itself. That is the same instinctual response to freeze, to blend in, to protect yourself, to be so quiet, to not cause any disruption or attraction to you. So as you grow up, you play small. You play small so you don't get noticed. You blend in with the environment. You do what everybody else is doing so you don't get all the attention. You sit in the back of the room so you don't get called upon. You wait for other people to start before you initiate action to make sure that it's safe. Blending in, social conformity. Even though you don't agree with certain social standards, you blend in, you go along with the norm to be safe. It's designed to make you safe. The other side is the fawn response. Now, the fawn response is the people pleaser. Because when you're getting abused, the only thing you can do to ease the abuse is to just give in to what your abusers want you to do and say and be. So there's a sense of obedience, almost like a slave, that we become the fawn just to appease the abusers. It is in a reaction to make you safe, to make the abuse stop, to disarm the threat so you're safe. And as you get older, you become a people pleaser. And this is when you're taking care of everybody else around you, but you're not taking care of yourself. You're putting yourself second. You're making sure everybody else is okay, but you're not making yourself feel okay, and that's exhausting. Because making everybody else feel like they're okay is a way of making yourself feel safe. And it's better than feeling afraid. So all of these responses are designed to make you feel safe. Only that is the cause of the emotional dysregulation, because it gets old. There is a breaking point to people pleasing, because then your values, your emotional needs are not met. Your sense of validation is not met. Your sense of confidence, your self-worth isn't developed. Your sense of safety, your sense of, is that safety provided? Are you protected? Isn't met. And when you start to feel dysregulated, you get triggered. Somebody says something to you that bothers you deeply, that deeply offends you because it reminds you of the abuse that you went under. Because the mind is constantly replaying the memories of the abuse. And then somebody in your life, some situation, some circumstance reminds you of that time period, and you get triggered again. The panic, the fear, the sheer terror. And then the only thing you can do as an adult is rage out. Because rage, getting angry, is the courage response, actually. Having courage, there's a lot of anger that can be associated with courage, a lot of aggression. And it feels powerful. It feels empowering. It feels like you're taking your power back. No longer will I put up with this abuse. Only it's over the top. Instead of being assertive and establishing a healthy boundary, the rage, because of the emotional overwhelm. And because there's neurological changes, the emotional overwhelm happens very easily. It's happening all of the time, in fact. And that's what makes life so difficult, especially jobs, especially family. And it gets in the way. So here's how you create emotional regulation. Now, you're never going to completely tame the wild. It will always be a wild horse, only it will behave more appropriately in certain circumstances. Yoga, because it's an in-body experience, when you have these emotions, you need to ground yourself. You need to ground yourself in your body. Feel the earth beneath you, supporting you. Feel your feet on the ground, or the chair you're sitting on, or the earth or bed that you're lying down on. Feel Mother Earth supporting you and nurturing you and protecting you, that you can be in your body and still feel these emotions and not act out on them. Second thing to do, that's the awareness. You've got to create awareness, and that's the in-body awareness, because all emotions are ultimately sensations in the body. The second thing is focus on your breath. You'll notice when you're emotionally upset, your breathing becomes shallow. If you're having a panic attack, especially in a panic attack, you're going to notice your breathing is very shallow and rapid. And this becomes unconscious because we're stuck in the panic and the anxiety. We don't tune in to our emotions. We disassociate. Very common with people with CPTSD is to disassociate because the emotional overwhelm, it's too much to handle. So by grounding yourself, you're going to refocus and I'd say make yourself present in your body and then start breathing. Because breathing is going to move those emotions. The conscious breathing, count your breaths 1 to 10. Inhale 1, exhale 2, and take deep breaths. That's immediately going to slow the heart rate and calm your emotions down. Now, you could be so heated you feel like your eyeballs are on fire. You feel like your body is shaking. And when you go and when you become aware of your breath, you're going to feel that it's very shallow. And that's a physiological response. It's a natural response to feeling threatened. It's a natural response because now your inner dialogue, now your needs aren't being met and you're assuming things about people around you through this distorted belief system, this distorted comprehension. They're called cognitive dissonance, that you're not having a full comprehension of the circumstance because of the emotional dysregulation, because the brain is replaying. You're having a flashback, essentially. That's what causes the panic. So I'm not saying this is easy. Just go ahead and be in your body, get grounded, and start focusing on your breath. It takes practice. This alone will help you regulate your emotions. And when you're able to focus on your breath long enough and maintain that body awareness long enough, and it takes years, it doesn't happen overnight. Give yourself time. And in that time, talk to somebody. Yes, I mentioned earlier cognitive behavioral therapy, traditional talk therapy, as most psychologists do, doesn't work with CPTSD. But I'm not saying it doesn't give alleviation. It helps to have someone to talk to have someone share your experience and share your feelings and what matters to you, because then you're going to feel like someone is on your side, that someone gets you, that you're not alone in this world, that you're not some oddball reject of the world, that you actually are a good, wholesome human being who just needs to learn how to love yourself and experience and create nurturance in your life to create that sense of safety. Now, once you're able to maintain that in-body awareness, now that's why the yoga, the hatha yoga, all the stretches you see, helps create that in-body awareness. The more you do it, in fact, accessing your emotions through your body, getting into those different positions will help you open up to your subconscious mind and will actually clear those emotions. It will actually help think of emotions as energy in motion, and trauma is stored in your body, in your muscles, in fact. As a body worker, I've seen this in a lot of my clients, that the trauma comes out of their muscles. That chronic tension that you hold in your body is that frozen response. And you're not letting that tension go because you're protecting yourself. And it becomes unconscious that chronic tension is there for years. So stretching your body, even going to a massage therapist, working that tension out will help bring a sense of relaxation, because that emotional dysregulation in the brain, your brain naturally wants to come to some sort of homeostasis, a state of balance. And psychologically, you want resolution. Your emotions come in cycles, and you have to allow the cycle to complete itself. The incompletion of that emotional cycle is what creates the cognitive dissonance, is what creates the distrust, the paranoia, which is what creates the blaming and the story that goes on in your mind that you tell yourself that it's their fault. It's the circumstances' fault. That person did this to me, and it creates the victim mentality. The second step is focusing on your breath. Your breath is going to create regulation, because when you start to focus on your breath, there's a conscious attention. Now, neurologically, the flight, fight, freeze, or fawn is your limbic brain. And what regulates the limbic brain is what's called the prefrontal cortex, which is behind the forehead, which rules executive thinking, decision making, consequential thinking. Don't put your hand in the hot stove because it's going to get burned. So that's the activity of the prefrontal cortex. When you're counting your breaths and consciously breathing, you're actually stimulating the prefrontal cortex, which is the outer layer of the brain, the cortex, and that's consciousness. So by becoming mindful, by becoming conscious of your breath, that actually regulates the limbic brain, which is your emotions. And then the limbic brain gets down-regulated, and there's a sense of calmness. That's how you create inner peace. Inner peace is not automatic. It's something that needs to be cultivated through conscious breathing. And how you focus on your breath is the up and down sensation in your diaphragm. When you breathe, you feel your chest expand. When you exhale, you feel it contract. And that expansion and contraction of your chest and your belly is an in-body experience. So it helps ground you in your body, which will empower you to process those emotions. And when you can process those emotions and come to a sense of completion, you'll experience resolution. And then you'll experience a sense of forgiveness. Ultimately, it all boils down to your ability to move on and let go. And easier said than done, because that doesn't come without completion. So by meditating on your breath, you can feel those emotions arise and just become friends with them. Because underneath it, it is fear. That is the cornerstone and foundation of all of the emotional upset. You need to work with the emotion of fear and get comfortable feeling the emotion of fear. Now, when you walk in life, you take that emotion and turn it into excitement through curiosity. And it's hard to do that if you're getting angry and if you're crying and then you're feeling this panic and you're feeling this sense of rejection of the world, a sense of aversion, hating everything, not wanting to deal with anybody or anything. It's very hard to get in tune with the foundational experience of fear. So by practicing yoga and practicing this in-body experience and focusing on your breath, gradually you'll be able to peel away the layers. It's like peeling away the layers of an onion. And you'll be able to find resolution within you by allowing those emotions to come to completion and no longer blaming anybody, but accepting responsibility for the outcome of your life through the practice of meditation. That's how you overcome this emotional dysregulation. And again, it is harder than it sounds. It's easier. I can't say that's the opposite. It's harder than it sounds. So it takes practice. Give yourself time. And that creates patience, and it creates tolerance, and it creates self-acceptance. You are who you are. It's okay to be afraid. It's okay to feel angry. It's okay to have these emotional upsets because it's designed to make you feel safe. That deep down inside, you just want to feel safe. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with wanting to feel safe. It's when you're in a social setting, a work professional setting, a family event, where you start to have these emotional upsets that creates a very strange dynamic and interaction with people. That creates, what's required there is what's called emotional intelligence. You have to know when you're getting triggered so you know when to leave the circumstance that is triggering you, that is creating, or I should say, stimulating this emotional response. So when you start to feel the sense of irritation, and it begins with irritation, and then you become self-conscious, and you start to get worried about what other people think, and then you start to get enraged. The sense of anger builds up, and a sense of feeling isolated and alone, because those are the feelings that you had when you were going through those terrible times in your past. Go outside, go for a walk, take a 5-minute breather. Just go outside, get some fresh air, take 10 conscious deep breaths, inhalations and exhalations, full inhalations, and that will immediately calm you down. Start moving your body. Start doing jumping jacks, start dancing, run around the building. Whatever it is you need to do to move your body, move your body. Movement in the body is going to move your emotions and change your mood. And ground yourself in your breath. Then go back to the social setting, whether it's a party, family event, or a professional office experience. That is how you learn to regulate your emotions and tame the wild horse of your emotional well-being. If you have any questions, go ahead and leave a comment below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. I am a certified life coach. This is what I specialize in, of helping people who have trauma in their life not only heal of trauma, but experience success so you can create and produce a productive life to experience the freedom, the fulfillment, and the abundance you truly desire. Thank you so much for listening. I sure hope that helps.